The next subject is kind of important. There's some important issues in all of this, and that is the signs and experiences, etc., of moving, of what happens in the very last, in the end time. Let's say we're actually approaching the time when the poles are going to shift and the real thing's going to happen, and we're going to have to implement whatever we're going to implement. It's going to have to happen. Well, first of all I can tell you is what normally happens, and since we're not in a normal situation, I don't know what's going to happen. That's the truth. I really don't know. But there are certain things I'm pretty sure will occur because of the nature of the reality. The ones that I don't know about is what usually happens is the magnetic field of the Earth begins to decrease in value for hundreds of years prior to the event taking place. And you can actually map it if you want to look at it over time. It'll just keep going down and down and down and down and down. It'll get weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. In this case, the magnetic field of the Earth in our Earth today, 1993, has been dropping for over 500 years. And they know that for sure. And it's been getting weaker and weaker and weaker. However, it'll eventually get to the place where it'll get so unstable, and then at the end it begins to go all over the place. It begins to wander, which is what's now occurring, and has been occurring for a few years now. This is why the whales are beaching themselves, because the whales follow these ancient magnetic lines. And and these magnetic lines have now turned into land masses, and they just follow them right into land masses, where they're not supposed to be in land there. And that's the problem that's been going on. The magnetic field is the key to a lot of this. So this field gets weaker and weaker, and then usually about 3 months to 6 months before the field begins to truly distort. A real distortion that you could actually measure carefully, easily, with any kind of instruments that we have now, will begin to take place. When this happens, the world will totally lose it. We will be in a big banana zoo. All the social systems would break down. So usually what happens toward the end of a system like this, at the very, very end days, is it goes into chaos. Now, what I mean by that is, specifically, is that the emotional body is tied to not only your mental patterns that we talked about, how your mind could be erased, not only is your mental patterns tied to the magnetic field, which we're not real clear about in this thing, but there is but so are the emotional patterns, and those we are more clear about. In other words, the moon affects the magnetic field when it's full and it comes in close like that. The magnetic field of the Earth takes a slight bubble in the area that moves across as the full moon comes in. And you can just go to any police blotter in the United States or in the world, really, to any major city, and look what happens the day before, the day of, and the day after the full moon. There's more murders and rapes and killings and weird stuff going on at that time than any other time. And the reason is because if you are emotionally imbalanced, if you're on the edge, and the full moon comes, that's all it takes. It's just enough to throw you over the edge, and so you get more people then than ever. Well, imagine what would happen when the magnetic field of a planet just starts going all over the place. Just starts going crazy. So does the people. They just go crazy. They emotionally go crazy. And as soon as that happens, all your social systems break down. Your financial systems, your everything, all the way down there. They all are dependent on the emotional system first of the humans. And if that breaks down, then everything else breaks down. All your food chains are going to break down. Everything else, nobody's going to work, and everything falls apart. Now that may not happen, and there's a good chance that it won't happen. I'm only saying that's what usually takes place, okay? And that's usually 3 to 6 months before. And then the thing that probably will happen, and you'll probably understand in a minute why this will almost for sure take place, is about 5 to 6 hours before the actual dimensional shift begins to occur and the poles begin to shift. And usually, by the way, the shifting of the poles and the consciousness change are simultaneous and interconnected on magnetic and electromagnetic levels. The third and the fourth dimension begin to, if you want to look at it as a membrane, though they're not really that way. Each one passes through each one already. But the third and the fourth dimension begin to interface. And when they do, two things happen almost every time. It's almost unavoidable, and I can't see how this one could not happen. And that is that something that I talked about before, where I said that these synthetic objects, things, I don't have too many synthetic, but like this bar of metal and stuff like this, all these synthetic things, remember we talked about them, didn't I say that?
Yes.
Coming in, all that stuff came out of the causal plane. And, well, all those things, the grid starts breaking down. When the consciousness level starts breaking down, the whole grid starts that the people are on begins to degenerate and break down. And when it does, all this stuff and those things and all those things start going unstable and start disappearing right before your eyes, turning into their elements. Exactly what that looks like, I don't know. The atoms aren't going to go away. They're just going to return to their natural state. And I don't exactly know what that means precisely. I don't have that in my memory.
What's the 5 or 6 hours mean?
That's when it will begin. 5 or 6 hours before the actual shifting of the axis, before the actual going from third to fourth dimension, before the actual thing happens, which I'm about to talk about. That's when you'll begin to see synthetic objects begin to disappear. One second. And there's an entire spectrum of stability. Like I said before, some things are very unstable, and some things are not as unstable. So you're not going to have everything go poof like that at once. It's just going to start happening, and it's going to be a very obvious event. To say the least. Plus, if you're already unstable, then that'll tend to slingshot you into Goo-Goo-ville. Yeah.
That really reminds me of, like, the wife was healing herself. It's like the earth is healing itself, maybe at that point. And maybe that's what it means. It goes back to where it was before.
In a way, it's true. That's what it's doing. Is returning the dream, because it's just light. It's just a dream. Returning it back to its initial state. These are the same old atoms we've been using over and over and over. They've been here from the beginning. Recycle. And it's for this reason that the native peoples of the world, at least most of them, I don't know if this is true. Is this true in Hawaii? Do you know this? What I'm about to say, you can answer this. My connection is with the Taos Pueblo, and I have a strong connection with them. And they've been there for 1,400 years, and they knew this was coming a long time ago. And they were told even until right today, that this day, the day of purification, would occur, and that in their buildings and everything, they're not allowed to use any synthetic things at all, nothing. And the people thought that was because they didn't want to be connected with white man kind of stuff. But it had nothing to do with that. They only have mud and sticks and mud floors and wood doors and things like this in them. And they're not even allowed by law to have anything synthetic in them, because they know that it won't be there in the end times. And in the end times, they're told that they know what the signs are. These signs that I'm talking about, they already know what these things are. And when they see these things happen, when they see the society starting to go totally crazy and all these things happen, they are told to go even though they have modern homes out around the place, it's called their summer homes they have out there. They live in them a lot. They all have their own room and place to go when the time has. Each family has their place to go. And when the time is, they're all to go back to the old Pueblo, go into the rooms, cover up the windows so you don't look out, not to look out, because there would be so many unusual things going out there that it would just cause fear. So they're told not to look outside, to sit down, and to pray, and and to remain inside their buildings. And there's another thing that will occur or could occur simultaneously, depending on where you are geographically on the planet. So this may happen, it may not happen. The other one will happen for sure, I think. This one, you got about, I would say about a 20-80% chance. It's about 80% chance it will happen. 20% it may not. And that is that a fourth dimensional object may appear into your space before you actually go into the fourth dimension. If that happens, there won't be any doubt whatsoever that that's taken place, because it will be the weirdest thing you've ever experienced ever in your entire life since you were a baby. It will be colors that are coming to you that register on your mind in a way that you've never seen. So just the phenomena of seeing colors you didn't know existed will definitely alert you to this is it. But it'll also be colors that you remember when you all looked at you took the piece of paper away? You took the piece of paper away and maybe it's my belt or something. You took you remember when we had those things over there, and you took the paper away and you saw how that light was kind of glowing off and stuff? They have kind of that kind of they have colors that glow on their own, only a lot brighter. And they're just new and different. And objects don't have these flat kind of things. Everything glows on its own kind. I can't explain it to you. It's very beautiful. But shape is another thing, is that the shape is such that you can't possibly imagine what the heck the shape is. So when you see it, you'll know. There won't be any doubt. You'll go, aha, there won't be any doubt. But my advice to you on this is if you can at all help it, and you may not be able to help it, but if you can at all help it, don't touch it. Because if you do, it will slam you into the fourth dimension. It'll suck you out of here and throw you in there very quickly. And if you like to go fast, that's the way, but it's better if you go a little slower right now. And just...
what was the danger?
I don't know if it's a danger or not, but probably the main danger would be going so fast as fear. Fear is a real big danger. Well, normally, I'm going to talk about that in just a second. We'll hold that off just for a moment. The next thing that happens after that is very, very quickly, within 5 to 6 hours after that, you're going to see this shifting in colors I talked about, from red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, flash of white, everything turning gold, going to black, and you're going to find yourself in the great void. And you'll be in the great void for about 3 days. And then all of a sudden, in an instant, you will find yourself in this beautiful, highly unusual new world. Not having the slightest idea what's going on, but just have a good time. And don't worry about a thing, really. I mean, there's nothing to worry about. Absolutely nothing. It's just fine. You're just a baby, that's all. But there's no problem, not any problem at all. It's totally covered. You'll understand as it goes on. In fact, the more fun you have, the better it'll be. There is a problem with some people, and this has into what she said, will everybody go? In the normal scenario, what usually happens in a normal situation like this is only a few people make it through. This is what Jesus was referring to. Many are called and few are chosen. This is what usually happens. Not very many people of a planet can get through to the higher levels on the first time around. But once those few people get through, then over a long period of time, those few people slowly bring through the rest of the planet. But it takes a long time. That's what normally happens. In this case, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think that we're going to see every single last person on the planet go through, without exception. That's what we think is going to happen. And very quickly and very sophisticatedly, in some kind of really extraordinary way. But I can't talk about that because I don't know if that's going to happen. So all I can talk about is what will probably happen, what usually happens. And so that this many are called and many are called. Good thing, boy, we're getting near the end here. Many are called and few are chosen, because what usually happens is a few go through, and then a few more go through that shouldn't have gone through, and then most of them don't go through. And so part of them end up on one-dimensional level of the Earth or the planet. A few of them end up on the other dimensional end of the planet. And the ones that weren't supposed to go through have an interesting experience. And this relates to, this is a real important point, what I'm about to say. You might underline this on your pages if you're writing. You see, Jesus gave a parable about this time, though I don't think that most people really knew what he was talking about. He talked about this farmer who was growing wheat, and his helpers came in and said that there was weeds growing in the wheat, and asked what to do. And the farmer said to let them grow with the wheat, and that they would separate the shaft from the shaft afterwards. Now, as I understand it, that is not what most farmers do. They usually try to get rid of those weeds before they turn into these giant weeds, and then the whole thing gets mixed up. So what he was really talking about was an unusual situation, which is the wheat are the people that are prepared. And being prepared, I mean their emotional bodies and their minds and their hearts and everything are clean and have done the work and are ready to make that transition. But there may be somebody who was almost ready, but not quite ready, because wasn't just quite finished in the whole thing. And so that person might have learned enough to be able to get over to the other side when it all happens. But what happens to that person is they get onto the other side, and here they're now in a world that they're not quite ready for, and everything is totally unusual and a little scary. And their fears come up. Well, you see, the nature of the fourth dimension is it's similar to what it is here, actually. It's true everywhere, only in difference in timing. On the third dimension, whatever you think and whatever you feel is creating the reality you're around. It just usually isn't instantaneous. It's usually, there's a little time lag, and sometimes so much of a time lag that you don't even know that it's really you that's doing it. But in the fourth dimension, it's absolutely instantaneous with each breath. So whatever you're thinking and feeling happens now, right now. And so if you come over there and suddenly you're in this strange world, then what people tend to do in the beginning, since it's it is a kind of like a mental emotional mirror, they begin to try to create third dimensional world back again. But in the process of doing that, they usually become fearful. The fears come up. And whatever the fears are, the fears begin to manifest 3D in their life. And so if they are afraid of whatever it is, if they feel like they need to protect themselves, I always use this one, trying to protect themselves, they start getting afraid, They start seeing people that they're actually creating. And they see these things, and it all looks scary to them. They think they need to protect themselves, and they say, I need a sword, I need a knife, I need a gun. Got to protect myself. And they look down, and here's this gun, and they grab this. Oh, there's one. They grab a gun, and they shoot at this person that's coming at them, and they shoot back, and they find themselves in a battle, and the battle devours them and kills them and throws them back in the third dimension, spits them out, because they had a fear. And Jesus talked about this also, and he said, if you live by the sword, you will die by the sword. And this is exactly what he was referring to, this time that was coming. Much of what he was talking about was preparing for after the resurrection, not before. He says, if you live by the sword, you'll die by the sword. He also said something else. The meek would inherit the earth. And so if you're sitting there and having a good old time, and you're just saying to yourself, love and truth and beauty and trust and harmony and peace, then that is exactly what manifests in your reality, because that's what's coming out of your thoughts. And you manifest a stable reality. And the reality embraces you and keeps you. Or in other words, you keep yourself. You create it yourself. And so you end up being the inheritors of the earth, only on another dimensional level. And so the greatest thing that I can see to do at this time, other than the schooling and learning and opening the heart, is try to improve upon all those things of spirit and character, so that you don't do all those things like killing and stealing and beating and hurting and all those other things, because they will wrap right back at you on the other plane, and it will be instantly, absolutely instant. And we have all this time now, a little bit, and so we could, and each moment is an opportunity to try to improve upon that aspect of ourselves, become less afraid, become more loving, become more trusting, and to start living what, we've got a perfect example here. We've got other ones too, but a real good one is Jesus. He led a life that, if you can even live close to that, will probably be fine.
I thought 3D would be over.
Huh?
I thought 3D would be over for everyone.
What I'm talking about now is what normally happens, not what will happen.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what will happen because I don't know. All I can tell, I'm talking about what is the standard, normal thing that normally occurs. So, but in the understanding of what normally happens, you can see the importance of how the purification of our thoughts and feelings. You can see why the American Indians call it the Day of Purification. It starts making a whole lot more sense. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Sometimes you speak in terms of the dimensional shift possibly happening at any moment when it's going forward, and at other times you speak in terms of things like developing silicon, carbon life forms and things that might happen as your technology continues. And so I can't get a clear feeling of what you're feeling.
I have both sides going at once. That's how I survive here. I have a part of me going on and doing a job and working and doing everything I can to help the world, do everything I can to heal the third dimension in every way I can, to make it as healthy as it can and last as long as it can, and to pay all my bills and be responsible and all that kind of stuff. And I'm willing to think along the lines of technology that will help the planet, blah, 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 and things like that. But I got this other, I'm real schizophrenic. I got this other side of me that is well aware of the situation on the other levels and is preparing for that side at the same time. And to me, there needs to be this balance in this situation that we're in right now. if you get too much into not taking care of yourself as a body, then that's not going to help the situation either. And at the same time, if you get too much in taking care of the body and not caring about the other thing, that's going to also you're not going to make it that way. So it's this tightrope balance. And so depending on how the question and what you're talking, where you're coming to me from, how you talk to me will depend on how I answer that, what you're saying. And we've come from all different levels here, so I'm switching back and forth. It's true, a lot. Did that help? Kind of. Yeah. Do we have that? We're going to do this. Hold on a second. Actually, let me get the information out, because we've only got 15 more minutes. Let me get it out, and then I'll stay here as long as you want. And then we can ask questions. The other thing that you will discover after you stay there for a while, what usually, again, we're in the usually happens mode, what normally occurs, is that the person, when they get into the fourth dimension for the first time, which is an exhilarating experience because of being light and realizing that it's light, it's like watching that computer when I could think and see what was happening. It's like watching the reality conform to what you're thinking and feeling, and the freedom and the incredibleness of what it means. At first, you usually put a lot of limitations on yourself, like you got here. You assume the rules are kind of the same. Slowly, you begin to realize that the rules are real different, and that a lot of things do not have to be the same way. And you realize you can start shaping things with your mind, and you can lift things off the ground, and you can do all kinds of things that would seem impossible. And then, almost inevitably, because you're a baby still, so you start playing with toys, and one of the toys then is that you look down at your body and you go, oh yeah. And you realize that you can change your body. So you usually heal everything real quick. And then that's usually not enough. That's the first thing. You get rid of all that stuff and make everything work real good. And then you usually change yourself to the ideal that you've always wanted to be. That's a sort of a kid thing to do. And so you make yourself real tall and handsome or real beautiful, and you become what you've always wanted to be. And but you can get pretty tired of that, but that's usually one of the things you'll do. And then after a while you'll think, well, what's next? Because like if you go to the fourth dimensional world, you will notice that they are awfully beautiful. Almost all of them. They're all young and they're all beautiful and they're just incredibly and everything else like that. They have their own personalities and how they want to look, but they're usually always real beautiful. And then you begin to notice, you begin to learn other things. At one point there, you're going to become aware that something's moving around in all of this light. And inevitably, you'll soon become aware that there's these very big beings there. They'll be, relative to you, they'll be 10 to 16 feet tall, and they'll have these big heads. And when you look at them, you'll have this uncanny feeling of love toward them. Because it's mommy and daddy. And there is mommy and daddy on the fourth dimension. It's one of the last kind of mommy and daddy things in a way. But there will be mommy and daddy in this next world where you're going into. You're going into a high level of fourth dimension, but a low level of what's possible in other levels. You're still in body form. Your body will still look the same. It'll still feel the same, though it'll be basically won't be nothing to it. It'll almost be pure energy. There won't be hardly any atoms at all, but there will be atoms. Different kind of atoms, but there will be atoms. The atoms will be a different kind. And They're there to help you. They'll take care of you. They were there all along. You just didn't notice. You won't notice it at first. At one point, though, down the line, you'll notice it. But what this is called on the fourth dimension is a baby. An adult human being there is a baby. And but whereas it takes about 21 years for a little baby here to grow up to be an adult here, it takes about 2 years there, experientially, for the baby to metamorphosize and grow up. You'll realize you'll be growing and getting taller all the time and changing to grow up to be an adult in that world. And then slowly everything will start making sense, and the colors will make sense, and the forms will make sense. But your mind has to change. You have to reorientate everything inside of there. Originally we thought that was it. That was probably where we were going to go for a while. And originally it was conceived of that we would be there for about 1,000 years. At this point, I don't think so. I think that we'll be there. I think that we will make adulthood of about 2 years, because we do need to get to that stage of development to make the next jump. But then we will immediately go into the fifth dimension, and from there on in, I don't know. All I know is it should be, or probably will be, very rapid, extremely rapid, all the way up into the next dimensional level. But some of the questions that are usually asked are, what do we do about mates, children, dogs, pets, things of this nature here? Can you take them with you, and these kinds of things? There is a way that is possible for two mates to bring, or for you to help other life forms, but I don't know if that's going to be your way or not, though the information is in the grids, and I can't give that to you right now. But what Jesus said about this was that he said if there would be two of you in bed, meaning a married couple, and one of you I will take and one of you I will not. But he was referring to the many are called, few are chosen scenario. And in this case, I think we're all going. But I really don't know. You can't take someone with you in this Merkaba that you're learning here. It's only a one-seater. And it won't take anybody else. There is a possibility, though, of making one that is a 150,000-seater. And with just two people.
Wow.
And that's in the grids, and I don't know if you're the one to do that or what. And we'll see what's happening. I think a lot will change through next year. I think by next year we're going to know a lot more than we do now about everything. Because it's moving so fast. Huh? Thoth was the 32 Ascended Masters were the first ones to use it. I got it from Thoth. Right before he left, he came down. He said that they had finally given them, the higher consciousness had given them the proportions and speeds and all the various things of how to do this special Merkaba, and that they were going to do it or try it. He said that my work with him was over and completed, and we said goodbye and everything. He told me how to do it, and told me that I would teach it at one point. And he told me some other things, and then they left that evening, and they made it from what I feel. And so the Ascended Masters know what it is. They all know what this new thing is now. And it requires a spine of one person, and one more person connecting to that one person, and that the love between the two of them and certain fields can create a Merkaba that extends into space 1.6 million miles, and has the potential, has a vortex of 531 feet, which is about the size of 2 football fields. So 2 people can take as many people with them as can get in 2 football fields, which is pretty good. And so it changes the whole rules. And not only that, it isn't limited to this octave. It's not limited to any octave.
Does that mean you can make the planet a spaceship?
You absolutely can,
With
yes.
enough people, you can take the planet with you.
That's right. And that happens to be what the prophecy of the American Indians all over the North American continent say. Do you know that?
Read Ken Carey's work on starseed. That spirit speaks through that way too. They make an image that way. They describe an image that way.
Well, that's the ancient image of all the tribes of Canada, the United States, Mexico, and down in the Yucatan and all down in there. If you take the prophecy that is in common with all of them, they say that there will be 3 waves of people, huge masses of people that will die, and I think it's beginning right about this time. I can't remember the dates, but it's about 1993. This huge mass of people dies all at once on the planet, and this group of people, their spirits merge together and they leave. They go away. Leave the evolutionary pattern of the Earth, and they go to another planet and they merge with another evolutionary pattern. And then a year or so later, another huge wave dies and goes. They all planned it. They all worked it out. They all planned it. And they leave at this time and go to another planet and leave. Now, the third planet, if I got this right, it's been a while since I've read these prophecies. The third one dies, and they all blend together, but they go out into space, meaning all the dimensional levels. They leave without any particular place where they're going. They're Vincious type. They want to just travel and find out what looks good. And so they take off in their Merkaba, a living Merkaba. Who's ever left over, the entire Earth goes into unity consciousness, and we all become one. The rainbow tribes all become one. All the different colors of the world become brothers and sisters again. And the whole planet becomes what they say is a spaceship. They don't say the word Merkaba. They say it becomes a spaceship, and that we agree, and that we take it out of orbit and fly it away to a new place. That's what they say. It's not me saying that. That's what the American Indians say. And it's not one tribe saying that. It's like hundreds. They all say that. So when I first heard that, I couldn't think of how that could be. Now I know how it can be. I could see how that's actually possible. I don't know if that's what we're going to do. I'm not saying that. Don't get me wrong. All I know is that is very possible. And the direction we're heading right now does look like whoever's on this earth when this thing takes place is going to go into unity consciousness. And we are going to go to a unique place. And if we did join together in a massive Merkaba, which is possible, on Earth, if we linked with the Earth's own Merkaba fielding and activated it, we could take our Earth with us to the all the way through to the other level. I mean, we could actually take it with us. I don't know what that means. Don't ask me. I don't have any idea, but I know that we could do it if that's what we were called upon. But I don't know really what it means. But I mean, in a way, it kind of looks like a giant attachment. But see, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen. Yeah. That's just, but that is what the American Indians say. Let me just see one more thing. We got 2 minutes. Let me think. Is there anything else?
Children of light.
What?
The children. You said there was a special children of light or something.
The children?
You say there was a new.
Oh, about taking children. A lot of people want to know about their kids, if they could take their kids with them.
No. 2 or 3 days ago, you said that there was another, like the children being born or a new race or something like that of light or something coming.
Well, there's millions of kids right now that are on the planet right now that are very highly developed beings. I said that, and that I believe either all or almost all of the children who are being born at this minute are these kinds of beings. It's gone from just a few to almost everything. But I don't know what you're talking about. that they would lead us. That they would be the ones that wake up and lead us out. Even Jesus did something about that into our own nature, replying that lest ye become like children, something like that. You will not enter into the kingdom of heaven. The animals have no problem at this point. That's all been solved totally. The natural animals never did have a problem, and the animals that have been close to us and have been synthetically breeding, those problems were solved a long time ago. They don't have any problem. It's only humans. It's totally left to just to humans. That's all it is. Yes.
When you said that there'd be incredible chaos.
I said, that's what usually happens. There may be no chaos at all. You may get no warning at all. In other words, the better we get, the less warning we get.
That to me would seem as it was that would be manifested in the world. People that would die at that time.
Yeah, it could be.
All
Well, no, but that couldn't coincide with the American Indian prophecy, though, because there was a year or so between each one of these waves. And the chaos aspect happens at the very, very end, a few months before. So.
with the predictions, it sounds as though there's going to be a lot of shifts on the earth.
But what the American Indians are saying is that these if we're talking about that these waves leave prior to the chaos and prior to the shifting of the axis, because it would have to be considering how much time is between each one of these waves.
Also, they say that they're dying and moving rather than ascending, right?
Right. They're dying, merging as one oversoul, and then flying away, taken off. Which is kind of like what the Hebrews did when they came here. They came here as a oversoul from another place somewhere where they did not make it very well. And in a way, that's what's happening with these beings. They're not really making it, so they're going to go to somewhere that is more appropriate for them. Yeah.
Something that did not make sense to me.
Can we use the microphone?
Yeah. Yeah, let's use the mic. Bye, John.
Bye, John.
Bye-bye. Thank you. A lot of people have to fly out. Does anybody have to fly out of here real quick? If they do, I mean, we can close right now until the pole shifts.
We'll stay till the morning.
Okay.
Something that did not make sense to me was why could we see the phenomenal colors and shapes before we go through the great void?
It's like there's an interface. It's beginning it's just beginning to interface. It's like if you had it's like an interference pattern. If you have something that's beginning to move through each other, it's all here. It's not like, see, this image of an interference pattern or of a membrane or two things coming together is not accurate. It's right through the room. It's everything. And so part of it is starting to come in. Part of it has already come through. Part of it's starting to come in. Part of it is starting to go out. It's starting to separate between. It's starting to merge. I don't know how to express it. I'm told that this will happen, and I know what fourth dimensional stuff looks like. And so I haven't been through this experience, at least not in a very long time. And so I can't say more than what I'm being told, that to expect these two things occurring prior to. But again, the one with the synthetic objects, they'll say almost certainly, because that's a matter of third dimension breaking down. The fourth dimensional objects, they emphasize it depends on where you are geographically, whether or not you will experience that or not. And so exactly what that means, I can't tell you. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So, bearing all this in mind, what we've just been talking about, what is the purpose of the individual Merkaba that we're learning if the whole planet's going to go from third to fourth dimension with this pole shift anyway?
I'm not saying that everybody's going to do it, so why bother?
Right. Yeah,
Well, if you don't do it, it might not happen. The reason it is happening is because you're taking the time to open your heart. And lots of other people are too. If people didn't, then this wouldn't be occurring. It's not going to occur on its own. It's happening because of our energies. It isn't going to automatically occur.
So, but then if the most important part of the whole thing is the opening of the heart, then what's needed is the technique of the opening of the heart and not the technique of spinning the Merkaba.
You need both.
I take your word on that.
I mean, if you don't feel that, then you don't need it, and then do only what you feel is right.
No, on the contrary, I would like to just spin my Merkaba and go into fourth dimension tonight. That would suit me fine. But from what you're saying, that's not an option.
No, I'm not saying that. You may go home. In fact, it's happened before. You may go home and your higher self says, "Let's get out of here. Let's go now."
So that was another question. How many people of the people that you have taught have learned the 18th breath and are either going back and forth or decided to go and leave?
It's only a few. It's only a few, and that I've talked to that have been able to do this. And yeah, can go and come back. I know a few. Yeah, I know one who does it a lot.
Is there any advantage to being able to do anything useful doing this?
I don't know. It's that's something between you and your own higher self. If you've got a reason for doing it, there's got to be a reason. You're not doing it for just fun or kicks or something like that. There's got to be a reason for doing that. If you're going to go over and come back, usually the people that are doing that kind of thing were people that were already having a problem with it to begin with. There's a doctor near Seattle, and he would find himself disappearing out of the room all the time, right in front of other people. It would happen a lot, and he had no control over it at all. Yeah, well, there's more people than you would imagine that has this problem, and so when he learned the Merkaba, it was like this great relief to him because he could control it when it would happen and when it would not happen. And then now he's able to use it to go back and forth between it and be able to control it. He said, okay, now I'm going to sit down and do this, and I'm going to go over there, and now I'm going to come back, and he's able to control it.
Did you have a grateful to be there more? Was that what was going on with him disappearing? That it's time for him to be there more on the 14th?
I don't know. I mean, I spent a lot of time in the fourth dimension too, and I can say that I would much rather be there than here. If you're going to give me two places and you're just going to flip a coin and say which one you want to go to or something, I would rather be over there if I got my druthers because it's kind of more fun, and fun's real important to me. But I'm happy to be here, and it's taken a lot of work to get here to this level, and I'm not interested in leaving real fast. I want to go through it the way, but nevertheless, I'll gladly, on a drop of the hat when this takes place, I'm ready to go. Yeah.
You teach.
Where's the? We need the.
Can I just finish, please?
Okay.
One of the other things I have a question about is, apparently I was one of those 300 with Akhenaten and Nefertiti. And that whole thing, when you drew the diagram of the spiral going through the sarcophagus, whatever,
Yes.
in the Great Pyramid, and I've laid down there, I've done the whole Egyptian trip. What's happening to me now when I'm doing the first breath of the Merkaba is there's a very strong attraction to pulling out on a spiral, and there's sort of somehow there are numbers going on too in my head.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't complete it at that time. I died before I completed the thing. So I just want to know if there's any danger in my going out on that spiral. I've kind of been holding back because I feel like I don't know what I'm doing.
Again, you've got to ask your higher self. If you go out on that, if you've almost got all the training done, that would be a different path than what we're talking about here. But and that path is designed not to go out on and stay there, but to go out and come back. And so if higher self can give you exactly what you're supposed to do on that and tells you to do it, then go for it. You will definitely be changed after that. You will never be the same again. So maybe that's part of what your purpose in here is. Complete that training. Almost all of you are Egyptian. I can feel it. There's so much Egyptian blood here. It's ridiculous.
The other thing was the Merkaba experience I had just before I learned about you, and I tried to explain it to you the other day, and I don't think you understood what I was saying. The Merkaba, the spin that happened around my body was this way.
Yeah, I understand. From head to foot.
Could that happen even? I don't understand how that happened if there's this tube going through the star tetrahedron.
Oh no, you can. The field is such that the spin naturally happens from the nature of that in that orientation over there. However, once the spin is taking place, you can rotate it into any angle whatsoever. I know because I've done it. No, it does not, and I've done it. So I mean, I tried all the angles and spun it around, make sure, yeah, the thing really does do that. So I know you can do it.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Drunvalo, what kind of life do you have in the fourth dimension? There is no more IRS, no more businesses,
no more money.
No more money. So what kind of fun do you have, or?
Well,
No more dropping.
the fourth dimension is primarily a learning zone. I mean, it's a place of learning more than anything else for the kind of evolutionary path that we're going up onto. For example, I spent about 15 years in the Pleiades coming in here, and I have full memory of doing that. And there's a very specific planet there that's fourth dimensional. It has a green atmosphere, and the kinds of things that we would do. It's actually a university where I went to study about living in a place like this. And I had to learn how to come down here. I couldn't just come here. It was not easy. I had to learn a lot of stuff to get down here. And what we did is we played games day and night all the time. We had all kinds of games. But the games would be such that in the plane of the game, you would learn something. So it wasn't like doing the Olympics to see who is the best. It was a game that you would play that in playing the game, you would learn about the reality in life and what it was all about. And that's all I did was play games. And there was no pain, there was no sickness, there was none of that kind of stuff, there was no problems, there was no want or need or anything of those kinds of needs, or anything like that at all. It was purely a seeking of understanding and wisdom and trying to understand what it was all about. And everybody loved everybody, and there was just no... and they were all real beautiful and all this kind of stuff. They were all all tall and handsome and real had it real together on all kinds of levels like that. I remember, just to give you an example of one of the games that, I remember when I was a baby, when I was a little baby there, maybe 2 years old or something like that. You know how you play with blocks? You know, kids play with blocks. I had to play with blocks, but they were about as big around as those things there, and they were solid like granite. And there's a whole pile of them, and I had to lift them up into space with my mind and sort them into an image and set them down with my mind. And I was just a little tiny baby. It was a game. I remember when we were an adult, one of the games, we went in this room that was really a big room compared to the rooms. Some of the rooms are enormous. But the room was maybe a half a mile long. And we were out on this big round platform that looked out, dropped down over this big sweeping thing. It was all molded, enormous. And it was probably 5 times this wide. And went for about half a mile, and then about a quarter mile down, there was a corridor that came over off the other side, and there was these golden discs that were big, thick, and they were heavy. And they would take them kind of like a frisbee, and off this thing, people would stand around and watch this, and they got so much fun out of this. And they would throw these things down this long thing, and then they would guide them with their thoughts. And then they would have to guide them around into this other alley that they couldn't see. And then they had to psychically see around the corner to hit something down there. I can't even remember what that was, but they had to do something like that. And they loved that. I say they because I didn't actually play that game. I watched that game. I remember that one. But that's the kind of... it was things that were fun, and it's not all. You just don't work at playing games all the time. I mean, there are other things, but life is different. They coordinate a lot of the movement of souls from one place to another, like me, who was coming through there. I was coming down through the dimensional levels, and so I was coming from. I was coming from the 13th dimension, and I had to come down. I came in probably on about the 6th dimensional level and slowly came through on Melchizedek's Merkaba. I had to come through slowly to get to the Pleiades, and then until I got down to the level where they were at, which was about the 12th overtone, the 4th dimension. The thing about the Pleiades, this particular one, is that though they were 4th dimensional, they were very aware of what it was like to be 3rd dimensional. They knew what that was, and that's why I was assigned there. And so much of my training was to look first to be 4th dimensional, and then to learn how to slowly come down. But once I learned how to be the 4th dimensional there and got a kind of a real rough idea, which was basically nothing, I then had to go to a much lower level of 4th dimensional, which was Sirius. And there to work on a much lower level of that and sit and study from the orca whales that were there, one particular one, the history and what it was like to be a human being. Slowly studying all of that. It took a long time. But I don't have time to tell my entire life. It looks like that would take a long time. But I know I'm real familiar with the 4th dimension, at least from what I learned of it. I don't know, really, I guess I'd say I'm really bragging here, I'm real familiar with 4th. There's certain areas in the 4th dimension I'm familiar with. There are some areas I'm a lot less familiar with. It is a vast realm. But from what I remember, you won't be sorry that you're going to the 4th dimension and leaving here. I don't think that you'll be sad that once you get there.
Do you eat?
Huh? No.
Food?
A 4th dimensional body does need fire, earth, air, and water, and ether, which means that you still need to take in prana, and you need microscopic elements. You don't eat. but there is a certain intake of very extremely small amounts of elements, and but other than that, that's it. And you don't need to. There's no struggle to get that. It's always there and available. It's easy. But anything higher than that, you don't even need to intake prana like we do now. It's different.
Drunvalo, I have a question regarding the shift, when we do the shift over. If it's my understanding is correct. Okay, is this better? My understanding is that in doing the Merkaba, the idea behind that in spinning is to retain memory, consciously. We will, when we go over and make that change, that shift, we will remember. Otherwise, if we aren't in our Merkaba, we won't remember, we won't have memory.
Well, that's the normal rules of the game. Again, we have a unique situation here. If like something, what he's talking about here, where the Earth gets to the level, which is outrageous, but if it gets to the level where it creates an Earth Merkaba and takes us with it or something like that, then you'll be in one, but you may not be in your individual one. The individual one would be necessary for what? It's necessary if we do what we think it's going to do, which we're going to go from here to the fourth. Then you'll need that first step. And then some Merkaba is going to be necessary. If you start merging with higher and higher consciousness levels, then you're really going to be taking on their Merkaba field, or that Merkaba field, whatever that higher dimensional level will be. Yeah.
I think this is a question I've been wanting to ask for a while, that I've studied under a master. I've heard of masters. Now, Jesus actually demonstrated his abilities, but never have I seen anyone demonstrate their abilities. And I was wondering if it's possible, or why don't they demonstrate their abilities? Can you show us one of the possibilities? Or?
Well, I'll tell you. I definitely wouldn't do that on a video camera. And if I did, and you asked why? Oh.
I said turn them off. It's not the best thing to do. If you could think that you are ready. You could think that you could accept anything. You could think that anything can come your way, and you'd just be fine. But you might be amazed what that would do to someone if they were not quite ready. My sister, this is just a quick little story. My sister and I, and Ken Page also, had been visited by the Taos Pueblo, the chief of the Taos Pueblo, 35 years. He came every Christmas or more and come with his family and everything, would come and visit us. And because they know who my sister is and who Ken is, and me. Because we were all part of that tribe before, and they know exactly who we are, they recognize us. And they used to take my sister for about 1 month out of every year for about 10 years and initiate her into the pueblos, into the ancient rites, which they don't even allow Taos females to go in there, let alone a white female. But they allowed her to go in there and do the initiations. Only a handful of people are allowed to know the inner meanings of what these things are about. And one day, my sister was sitting in a field on the Taos Pueblo, way out somewhere. I know where it was, but it was just out on the field out there. And they were under a tree, or near a tree, and there was, they were in a crowd of about 5 or 6 American Indians and my sister.
little white girl. While they were standing there, this Spanish man came across the fields and came up, and he wasn't supposed to be there. It was illegal for him to be there, but he did it anyway. And he came across the fields and he saw them. And the Indians were teaching my sister something, but when the Spanish man came up, of course, they just stopped and acted like, "Hi, how you doing? Nothing going on," stuff like that. And he came in and kind of got in the middle of them. And an accident occurred. It was really rare. It was a fluke. One of the people in the pueblos down inside Kiva decided that they needed to go over and talk to this group. And so they made themselves about this little, put them in a little bubble, and shot out through the thing very quickly and came flying in over the top of them, and came right in and came right up on a branch, like rested right on a branch right in front of the group. The Spanish man just about went insane. I mean, he just about lost it. They almost lost this guy. And, of course, they immediately made it go away and everything else like that. It was too late. He saw it. He saw it with his eyes. And my sister said it was really, really, really traumatic for this person. And, I mean, this is outside the belief patterns. This is outside of what's supposed to be or what is not supposed to be. And so I don't. And the only way that I could do something like that is if higher self did it, and I'm not getting a yes on that at all. But it's really in fact with who is it, the Tibetan that allowed himself to be videoed with Omni magazine recently, doing that whole thing. I can hardly believe it. I can just hardly believe it. But he did it. He did it right for them in front of the whole thing. It's incredible. You need to reach this state on your own. And so usually if the teacher was going to take someone up on a ledge and have them dry those blankets, they're not going to have any of the other students there. The person needs to reach that state on their own, from their own understanding and their own abilities. And yet, maybe that's not always true. Maybe there are cases where a certain student would, or a certain person, may be allowed to directly experience those kinds of things.
Jesus did regularly, in front of hundreds of people.
Well, he did. There was actually only one that he did that was direct. Direct, in other words, meaning direct, meaning something that was that the mind could not rationalize away as being coming from, or coincidence, or coming from some other source, or something like that. In other words, he would heal someone, but they didn't see anything happen. You know what I mean? It didn't appear to go outside of the laws. However, turning water into wine is definitely doing that, and I do feel that we need to do that. And I've had lots of experiences like this in my life, but you can't do that. I've got it at least in my belief patterns that those things aren't, that I don't turn them on from my lower self. They're turned on from higher self. And it's just like a TM person, that could levitate if you couldn't do it. And I had one lady, a friend of mine, who was able to go up to the ceiling and sit there for half an hour and come back down. She lives in New York. And she's not going to do that. She's not going to go down to a supermarket and do that. I mean, that would cause.
Seeing something like that, though, has a way of breaking the conceptual reality, like this 5-day course has done.
Well, does if Maharaji has a group of people, he would he not let the whole group go at once? In other words, he wouldn't. He didn't.
He didn't display his cities. He often said that it doesn't matter what I can do, it matters what you can do. I don't want me to be tested scientifically. I want your brainwaves to be tested, because that's proof for the population, not what I can do. It also sets up to me, the display of any kind of city sets up this master disciple, and you're trying to show us that you're one of us, even though you've had very profound experience. This isn't the time for master disciple.
Well, I really agree. Besides that, I happen to know. I'm just going to have to be tied up, I guess. Definitely, I can't even move. What was I say?
Jesus needed to do it because people back then didn't have the awareness that we have now. They needed to be shocked into a reality that these things are possible, that miracles happen. Because he had to do things quickly to start moving the consciousness back. So the miracles shocked people. But here we don't really need that. We're more advanced.
But what happened was there was a negative side thing that happened with all the miracles that he did. He did so many outstanding things that people believed that only he could do them. And you know, that's what my parents believed. Well, we can't do that. Only he can do that. And yet he came here, he said, I came here to show you the possibilities of man. And the things that I can do, you can even do greater things. Not one Christian hears that, except for a few, like St. Francis and a few other ones, and a few other ones that really heard that. But, you know, he wasn't trying to do that. But nevertheless, he had to show the possibilities, and he did, that is possible. But it had an incredible negative effect. So I don't really, you know, I don't think it's a good idea. I really don't.
I don't.
What?
Will you finish your teaching and make comments about children? And at what age do children become adults and then they need to learn to do the Merkaba themselves?
Well, it's my experience that the children becomes an adult on their 12th birthday, or right around that time, that something happens to that child, and I'm not exactly sure what it is, but they become different, and the forgetting begins to happen very rapidly after that. So, but before then, this is another thing that Diana Gazis was saying, was that the healing process on children, that is, that if they're under 12 years old, that when they're under 12 years old, that there are many miraculous healings that take place from children, a lot. But as soon as they get over 12 years old, they stop.
So do we have to teach young people over 12 to create the Merkaba?
Oh, I want to, but I can't, because it's not my job. But if anybody wants to, I'll do everything I can to help. You know.
Do you want to go before 12 because they can remember something?
I'm not really sure if that's the place to start or not. If there was some kind of real simple way or teaching or something, or maybe if we got a little bit further down the line as a planet and opened up a little bit more, where demonstration would be acceptable on all kinds of levels, then I could see that easily. You know, in fact, if children were just simply allowed to be who they really are, it might work the other way around.
If they're under 12, do they automatically go? The angels take them?
That when things starts happening and all this starts happening, they'll just remember, oh yeah, I just did this, and you don't have to worry about them. They'll just do it. No problem.
This is in reference to the lack of experiences